The Ozarks are a place of deep roots and deeper stories. For generations, tales of mystery, monsters, and magic have been passed down on front porches, around campfires, and through the voices of neighbors who remember them best. From hand-drawn comics in haunted hotels to new storytellers keeping the tradition alive, Ozark Folklore isn't just about ghosts and legends, it's about how we connect to the land and to each other through the stories we tell. So settle in and listen for the whispers in the holler.
To get started, we thought we'd turn to the experts, the ones whose imaginations are wide open and unfiltered. Not scholars or historians, but third graders. We headed to a local elementary school to hear what they think about Ozark folklore. Because sometimes the truest insight doesn't come from seasoned voices. It comes from the minds of children.
We're going to talk about some stories. In particular, we're going to talk about some things that are called folklore. Has anyone ever heard the word folklore? You have?
Yeah.
Does anybody want to take a guess at what folklore means? What do you guess?
Legends or myths.
Shall I show you one picture that maybe you're familiar with, okay? I'm going to show you this picture, and then we're going to have you talk in your table groups about what you think this creature is.
What is that one?
You have to discuss. You got 10 seseconds to talk in your table groups what you think it is.
I think like the monster. Just an evil thing. I bet it's a Bigfoot. Like a long time. Bigfoot, big beast foot. That's what I think. It's a big guy.
Who's got a guess? What was that creature? What did you think you saw? What did you think?
Bigfoot?
You think it was a Bigfoot? What did you think?
I think it's a big beast.
A big beast, which is different than a Bigfoot, right? In the back there, what did you think?
I think it's a giant gorilla.
A giant gorilla. It did kind of look like that, right? Now I've got several to show you, and we're going to discuss different things about all of these creatures, okay? The question I want you to answer, this next creature, do you think it is frightening or friendly? Frightening or friendly? You've got 10 seconds to talk about it in your table groups. Go.
I think it's friendly. I think it's brainy. I think it's
All right, 3, 2, and 1. Eyes on me. What do you think?
I think it's friendly and fun.
Friendly and fun? What do you think?
I think it's friendly.
Friendly. Do you think it would take you for a ride?
Yes!
Okay, so we gave this creature a name. Do you want to know what we called this creature? A snoffus. Can everybody see that word? Yes. This is a snoffus. Can you say it with me? Snoffus.
Snoffus!
Okay, now I'm going to show you another creature. And for this next creature, you have to come up with what you think the name of the creature is. Just so you know, this is underwater. So this creature is swimming. Who has an answer? There's no right or wrong answers. What would you call it? What would you call it?
Underwater dragon.
Underwater dragon. What would you call it?
Underwater rhino.
Underwater rhino. You say that's a rhino because of the nose, because of the kind of horn? What do you think?
Ocean's T-Rex.
The ocean's T-Rex. This is someone's interpretation of something known as the White River Monster. Okay, let's look at a different one. Want to see a different one?
Yeah. Whoa. I don't like it.
What behaviors and actions would this creature do? What would it do? Talk about it with the people.
Eat you.
It would
I
eat
feel
you.
like it would try to harm you. It wouldn't be your friend. It would be very mean, and it would try to.
It will tear you into parts. I think he eats other animals because I can see the bones.
Right, you see the bones. So he eats other animals maybe. What do you say?
I think he might scratch people because of the long nails.
He has those long nails, right? He needs to go to the nail salon. This monster, they call this monster the Gowrow. And the Gowrow is said to be 60 feet long, have skin like as tough as a rhinoceros. It has eyes that shine. That's why his eyes look like they're little flashlights. And this has been a legend in Arkansas since the 1800s. People have told stories about this creature. Is there any truth to it? I don't know. But this creature exists in Ozark, where we live. Folklore, like you said, myths, legends, stories, okay?
Coming up,
Ozark storytellers are always very good about every story addressing the audience that they are telling the story to. So we have sort of, I think, three big areas, which is, sort of ghost stories, the hauntings, monster stories, cryptids, that sort of thing. And then we have a lot of witch stories as well, which are sort of the supernatural unknown part of the landscape.
and later.
We have our own Bigfoot, sort of, in the Falk monster. You've mentioned the Gowrow. What other creatures exist here in the natural state?
Well, we also have Smokey Joe. This is one that I'm quite partial to because it comes out of the region that I was raised out of. Now, Smokey Joe is more of a campfire tale.
In the dense pine woods and swamps of southern Arkansas, near a town called Fouke, there's talk of a creature that walks upright like a man, but leaves tracks far too large for any human foot. The Fouke monster, as it came to be known, is the Arkansas answer to Bigfoot, covered in dark hair, reeking of the wild, and vanishing into the trees just as quickly as it appears. Sightings peaked in the 1970s, inspiring fear, fascination, and even a cult film. But the legend itself stretches deeper into the hills, where generations of Arkansans have whispered about shadowy figures in the woods. Whether you believe it's beast, spirit, or something in between, the Fouke monster reminds us that some stories walk beside us, just out of sight.
The Fayetteville Public Library is full of stories, old and new, and it's the perfect place to begin our exploration of Ozark folklore. I'm meeting with folklorist and author Brandon Weston to talk about the tales that have shaped our region for generations and those mysterious creatures that still spark our imagination. Brandon, for those who are not familiar, let's talk about folklore. How would you define Ozark folklore?
I would say Ozark folklore is the storytelling tradition, the oral folklore tradition that originates with the Ozark people here in the Ozark Mountains, but is a part of a continuing, evolving tradition that goes back to Appalachia and then back to European sources even.
So what makes Ozark traditions and stories maybe different from other parts in the U.S.? Or even Europe, even worldwide?
Yeah, I think that, we sort of represent the more recent evolution of a lot of these storytelling traditions. And so when you look at Ozark folklore, you'll see a lot of similarities with other American traditions, like we said, European traditions. But Ozarkers always like to give their own spin on stories. We call it sort of doctoring up the story. And so Ozark storytellers are always very good about every story addressing the audience that they are telling the story to. And so this is how you get a lot of different stories that have common themes, but then change, from region to region, community to community.
So what sort of themes do you see repeated kind of in Ozark folklore?
So we have sort of, I think, three big areas, which is, sort of ghost stories, the hauntings, monster stories, cryptids, that sort of thing. And then we have a lot of witch stories as well, which are sort of the supernatural unknown part of the landscape.
Define cryptids for those who aren't familiar with that term. And where did that term even come from? Do you know?
Yeah, so I don't know the exact origin, but it's a recent term, mid to late 20th century term. And it's connected to this study of monsters and the sort of what some people might call fictional creatures, but are just sort of creatures that are out of the ordinary, creatures that are a little bit mysterious, monstrous, that sort of thing. And it connects to cryptozoology, which is the study of these hidden monsters.
Here, the land shapes the legends. Water, caves, steep hills, deep woods, each giving rise to its own creature.
Well, what kinds of creatures or supernatural beings show up most frequently in folklore, just in general? What are those creatures that you're like, that's kind of the same thing as over here is the same,
We have a lot of, like we were talking about with the monster stories, we have a lot of connection to these bigger categories of monsters, like, the sort of big reptiles, like the Gowrow and the hide behind and these other monstrous lizards and snakes. We also have the sort of the mammals, I guess you could say, like Bigfoot. We have sort of different types of Bigfoot creatures represented here. Then we have more unique ones like the side hill hoofer, which is a creature it's sort of a cross between a sheep and an armadillo, and it has legs shorter on one side of its body so that it can run around the bottom of hills without falling over. And the way to catch it is if you can get it turned over on its back, it can't right itself. So that's how you catch it. So we have a lot of these really interesting sort of monster stories because we have so much water around here. We have all these stories about monstrous catfish, monstrous, sort of water serpents and things like that.
White River Monster.
The White River Monster is a perfect example of that. And we have a lot of cave lore as well. So most of these stories, the ghosts, the witches, the monsters, they all have some connection to culture, but also landscape. So connection to the forests, the caves, the waterways, that sort of thing.
How did those stories get passed down from generation to generation to even where we are today? I mean, today we're sitting in a library in the children's book section. We're talking about, folklore. How did it come to be this, and where did it start?
So in the Ozarks, this started off through oral storytelling, so families passing down stories and families. That's how I got interested in this, was my family's passing down stories. And so it started off as this oral storytelling tradition that then, folklorists got interested in and started writing down. We still have, audio recordings from folklorists like Vance Randolph and Mary Celicia Parler, Otto Ernest Rayburn. We have audio recordings of some of these oral traditions, and then we also have written versions of a lot of these stories. And so I would say most storytellers today, sort of like me, I'm a mixture of, inheriting from the oral storytelling tradition as well as from the written. And I think that you'll find that with a lot of storytellers. They, we like our books, but we also like, listening to people as they tell these tales.
Folklore isn't a museum piece. It's growing, changing, constantly remixed for the moment we're living in.
Is there anything new being created today? Are we still witnessing new stories or the evolution of old stories?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm a big proponent in, the evolution of folklore that, I always tell people, even folk stories even the most widely published folk stories, somebody told them for the first time at some point in the past. They had a creation point. And so, we can learn from and we can absorb these published folk tales, these folk tales we collect ourselves, but we can also put our spin on them, and we can use these folk stories to sort of address the wider communities around us, and we can change them and make them more relevant. And I think that that's how folklore survives, is that it evolves to become relevant for the time.
In your studies, do some of these tales, the origin point, is it to do with something that is true, and then over time maybe it becomes more fantastical?
Yeah, I always say that every folktale is based in some truth, whether that truth is just the truth of the place, the landscape itself, but every folk story has that as its starting point. And the folk stories that stick with us, that stick in our memories, are the ones that are going to relate to some truth, that are going to be relatable to us. The ones that aren't relatable, we forget. And so as we are collecting these for ourselves, or as we're researching these stories, it's important to see how they interweave with that reality, even if they have fantastical elements about them.
So, just to that point, how do you think these stories shape the identity and sense of community, not only in our region, but like whatever region that you're in? Right?
Yeah, I think folk stories have this interesting way of really bringing people together. We like the experience of sitting down and telling stories. Even if it's just, getting people together for a dinner party and telling some funny story about work or whatever. This is folklore. These are folk tales. And so it has this unique ability to be able to bring people together, get people to, be quiet for a little while, which is an amazing feat these days, but get people to focus on the imagination and on, on stories from somebody's life or from the region, whatever it is. And so I think that they still have a part to play in our communities. They can still be used as a way to further bring people together, as well as sort of addressing the time, addressing the community, the needs of the community. A lot of these folk tales were about, local people who were, doing things that were wrong or whatever. So these folk stories have a way of being able to provide news, provide information, as well as entertainment.
Yeah, so interesting. So I know it changes over time, probably, I would assume, but do you have right now a current favorite folk tale that you're like, oh man, that's my jam right now, I love that one?
Well, this time of the year, spooky season, I'm always breaking out the ghost stories, but then one of my favorite areas are what are called witch revenge stories. And these are stories of usually healers. In the Ozarks, we have granny women who were typically midwives who are accused of witchcraft and then enact their revenge upon their accusers in some way. And so we have a lot of these different sort of witch revenge stories, and they're my favorite by far.
Do you have one? Could you share one, like in a nutshell?
Yeah, so there's a story about the origin of the red-headed woodpecker, the pileated woodpecker, and the story is that it originates with a healer, an old woman in the woods called Granny Redcap, because she always wore a knitted red hat around. And she was a healer for the community, but the community turned on her. And one night they took her and burned her at the stake as a witch. But as the flames leapt around her, she laughed and she turned into a woodpecker that flew up into the tree. And from then on, every time the people would see a woodpecker in the woods, they knew that they were still under her curse.
Wow. See, I got chills just listening to that. I know it's silly, but like you see the woodpecker around, right? And now I'm going to think of Granny Redcap because of those words.
Ghosts, witches, monsters, and the land that births them. In the Ozarks, stories don't just survive, they adapt, so the next voice can carry them farther down the ridge. Coming up.
I've heard of the White River Monster before, which is a creature that, comes out of the White River.
Sure. And the earliest stories of that, I believe, actually go to around the Civil War, if not a little after, with sightings of a devilfish, which is probably an earlier term for, what we would call cryptids of lake monster varieties and river monster varieties at that era.
And later.
In 1937, along comes a guy driving a purple Cord roadster, wearing white suits, lavender shirts and lavender ties, and claims to have the cure for cancer.
Yeah.
Only, of course, he's not their savior. He's not
Right.
curing cancer.
No, right.
The Gowrow. They say the Ozarks have always had their share of strange things lurking just beyond the light, and none so fearsome as the Gowrow. First written about in the Arkansas Gazette in 1897, this beast was said to stretch nearly 20 feet long, with tusks like a boar and claws sharp enough to tear through trees. Witnesses claimed it prowled the hollows and riverbanks, leaving a trail of broken brush and unease. Some believed it crawled out of deep caves to feed. Others swore it guarded its lair like a dragon of old. Whether born from frontier imagination or something far older, the Gowrow remains a warning whispered on dark Ozark nights. Never wander too close to the water's edge.
For a rock star like graphic novelist Gustav Carlson, we needed a rock star venue. So we headed to Pinpoint in downtown Fayetteville, a pinball bar tucked beneath Block Avenue where nostalgia hums and neon glows. Owner Bo Counts gave us a quick tour through a row of classic machines and the bar's spooky seasonal decor. It's the perfect place to talk folklore, imagination, and the monsters that come to life in Gustav's art.
Gustav, what drew you to Ozark Folklore as an inspiration for your art?
So I was originally just a monster kid. You know, if there was an episode or Fox News special about like Bigfoot or alien autopsies, I'd find my way into it, which, you know, I found my way into the X-Files as well. And I was a kid that was carrying, I believe it was Jerome Clark's The Unexplained, which was just this giant tome of every region's monsters, cryptids, and things like that. And then as I got older, I got more interested in, from an avenue as a writer, creating small fictional towns. And that ended up dovetailing nicely, because if you start thinking about building a small town, you want to think about its regional folklore as well.
Sure.
And studying real folklore allows you to better kind of create facsimiles of, you know, folklore for a fictional town.
That connection between imagination and regional storytelling became the heart of Gustav's work, blending his love of comics with the culture of the Ozarks.
You just used the term cryptid. Can you explain more about what that term means?
Yes, absolutely. Cryptids are, it's kind of a generic term for anything that goes bump in the night. It comes from cryptozoology, which is the study of hidden animals, or secret animals. And it used to, you know, things like the coelacanth would fall under it, the thylacine would fall under it, but in modern parlance, it mainly means Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster.
Through his art, Gustav reimagines these mysterious beings, some drawn from folklore, others shaped by his own creativity.
So when you're creating this art, right, you know that something exists. I know that you can pull from maybe imagery that you have seen. How much of existing imagery do you draw from, and then how much of it is your own reimagining of these creatures?
So that's a point I've had to think about a lot recently. I did all the way back when I was doing my original run of Backwood Folk, my comic. It was a web comic initially that I was doing in between classes in college. And I was studying the regional monsters, and I would incorporate things like the Gowrow. And at that point, I was kind of a little bit more cavalier in how accurate designs needed to be to the actual folklore. And so I created this sort of serpentine version of it with these long tusks and these saucer-like eyes. And there's elements of that in the original designs, but at this point, when I'm doing this in, I think, like 2010 or 2011, internet resources aren't quite as available on finding images of the Gowrow.
Right.
So I'm kind of playing a little bit more in my own imagination, save that it has big tusks and it's underground.
Sure.
What I've watched happened over years is that design got utilized in a Mental Floss article. And ever since, I've seen a whole new strain of Gowrow designs that look kind of like mine.
Yeah.
So now I try to backfill a bit and be like, okay, I got to go back to the original designs, because it's interesting watching, you know, a seed grow that you didn't quite intend.
Right.
You know, not to say that I designed the Gowrow, of
Kind
course.
of a little flattering, though.
Oh,
Also,
sure.
in a way.
But it does mean when I approach something that doesn't exist on the internet as far as an image goes, I do try to capture something a little bit more accurate to the folklore at first, so I'm not the authoritarian vision of a creature.
Sure.
Because there's a whole line of history with all of these.
I bet. Okay, so can we break it down a little bit? Speaking of, I was gonna say Ozark monsters, but let's just open it up, because we've got several sort of folklore tales and monsters, cryptids. What other creatures exist here in the natural state?
Well, we also have Smokey Joe. This is one that I'm quite partial to because it comes out of the region that I was raised out of. Now, Smokey Joe is more of a campfire tale of a scoutmaster at Camp Orr, Boy Scout master, who gets hit in the head by a rock by one of the counselors during a fight in the riverbed, loses consciousness, and becomes this wild man living in the caves. Now, as that story progresses, of course, he looks more and more hairy, he's got bigger and bigger feet, and now you see this campfire story often cited as proof of Bigfoot in the Ozarks, despite the fact it comes from a tradition of wild men.
Interesting. Okay, and that's over in the Ponca region?
Yes,
is that
yes.
right?
It's by Ponca.
Yeah.
Camp Orr is above that, yeah.
I've heard of the White River Monster before, which is a creature that, you know, comes out of the White River.
Sure, sure. And the earliest stories of that, I believe, actually go to around the Civil War, if not a little after, with sightings of a devilfish, which is probably an earlier term for, you know, what we would call cryptids of lake monster varieties and river monster varieties at that era. There was also a diver in the 30s, I believe, it might be earlier, that tried to find it to no success. I think encountered a catfish instead.
Okay.
But it is also one of the few monsters that is protected by the government.
What?
There is a White River Monster Reserve.
Tell me more about that. What does that mean?
In the 70s, they just decided that this is our monster. We're going to keep it. You can't hunt it. You can't catch it. It's safe here.
Yeah. Wow. So we've got a preserved area for that monster.
Right.
We've staked our claim.
Now, how much of this comes out of caring for these secret animals and how much comes as a good bit of marketing and fun?
Right.
It's always impossible to decipher. There's a point where cryptids, I think, also become town mascots.
Yes, for sure. And speaking of that, and kind of the energy that drives some of this enthusiasm around these monsters, what creature has been the most exciting for you to create?
I mean, it's always going to be the Galrau, right? Because it's like, I feel like I'm now kind of tied to its history a little bit. You know, just now, if I look at a cryptid wiki, I will see probably a drawing from Eve of the Ozarks, and that's wild to me. So I keep trying to redevelop what I think it looks like, and I, you know, I have no ownership again of the creature, but I do feel, you know, kinship with it.
In Gustav's comics, the Galrau isn't just a monster. It's a reflection of the Ozarks themselves. Strange, layered, and alive with imagination.
I'm curious about your art and just graphic novels in general. And in your opinion, does that help open up a world of folklore to maybe younger audiences, and in the same breath, the internet has done a lot as well. So I don't know, maybe you could speak to some of that.
Yeah, I mean, the internet's been fascinating for what it does for like strange animals and cryptids. We are finally inventing new ones. You know, obviously the most common online cryptid would be Slender Man, but we actually have one in the Ozarks that might predate it. And that would be, and this is the controversial thing I'll say on here, but the Ozark Holler, which is now probably cited as our most common cryptid or beast. You know, if you look into any book on the monsters of the states and things like that, it's certainly our regional most popular. But as far as I can tell, it dates back to the 90s on the internet. I found an article by cryptozoologist, he's also the founder of the International Museum of Cryptozoology in Portland, Maine, Lauren Coleman, wrote an article where he believes that he found the origin of it on a Memphis atheist forum.
Online?
Online.
Yeah.
And as a prank. Now, I've also heard variations that it started as a prank on frat boy forums and things like that.
Sure.
It's hard to say, but as far as I can tell, and I've talked to other researchers on this, and historians specifically, and we can't find any written record before the 90s.
Let me ask you this. Do you think that these monsters, do they exist to invoke fear? Are they supposed to be scary? or are they nice? I mean, where do you stand on that? Is it different from monster to monster?
Different from monster to monster, but I'd say most of them, and a lot of the ones I work with in my own kind of fiction or as inspirations of my own fiction, are cautionary tales. Stay out of the cave. There's a big monster in it. You know, don't dive too deep. The giant creature of the hole in the Buffalo River will grab you. You know, like they're the Smokey Joe story is largely a cautionary tale of behaving on a camping trip, right? Now there's other ones that are more mischievous that just explain phenomenon. There's the faraway bird, which is, you know, a vulture with a big one wing bigger than the other, so it's always circling. Okay. And I like a lot of them, like jackalopes, kind of sort of creatures, which I don't think the intent is to terrify, but to add more mystery to a world that is increasingly lacking in it.
Oh, that's well said. I totally agree. What role do you think artists play in preserving and maybe reinterpreting folklore?
We're part of the line of continuity. This is, you know, they're not all oral storytelling anymore, obviously, but I think it's still of that tradition because, like, the influences that we pick up from long ago are influences they were picking up from long ago, too. And so you can track some of our myths all the way back to Scotland and Ireland, and of course of the indigenous traditions as well. And I think it allows an artist to be in dialogue with not only their region, but the history of their region.
From ancient legends to modern myths, Gustav Karlsson reminds us that storytelling is the lifeblood of folklore, and the monsters we imagine say as much about us as the world we live in. Coming up.
My book is primarily oral histories. I'm talking to people, just people that are connected to the Crescent Hotel, or they were a lot of people that were very advanced in age that directly were connected to when it was the Baker Hospital.
You're a guy.
I'm a guy that I want the reader to just assimilate into me.
Right.
It was just that journey that I went on, and this is what I learned, and I want to share it with people.
Michael, the ghost of the Crescent Hotel. High on the hills of Eureka Springs, the Crescent Hotel has seen more than a century of laughter, sorrow, and mystery. Among its many ghosts, one name is spoken most often: Michael. Legend tells of an Irish stonemason who fell to his death during the hotel's construction in the late 1800s. Since then, guests in room 218 have reported strange happenings. Lights flickering, doors closing, the faint scent of tobacco smoke, and sudden cold where no draft should be. Some say Michael's spirit never left the place he helped build. Others believe he lingers as a reminder of how thin the veil truly is between the living and the dead. Either way, the Crescent stands as both a monument and a haunting, a place where every creak of the floorboard might be an echo of a ghost still on the job.
Not all stories stay on the page. Some are rooted in real places, like the Crescent Hotel in Eureka Springs. I'm meeting up with artist and author Sean Fitzgibbon, whose work uncovers the legends and true events that make the Crescent Hotel one of America's most haunted landmarks. Let's talk about this book.
Yeah,
it's because it kind of like put everything you love into one thing. You know,
100%.
You got the supernatural, you got some graphic design, some art, some writing.
Yes.
So tell us about it.
So yeah, like I said, I mean, I'm originally from Southwest Missouri, Webb City, and my dad's an artist. My parents live in Springfield, but he was my high school art teacher, and we lived across the street from this old Catholic church. And I grew up Catholic, and we went to this church. My dad's studio was in this old, it looked like a castle, like it's still standing. It's this old 100-year-old church. And so I remember as a kid, I would explore this church all the time. And so, I don't know, there was always something about place, you know, the sense of place. And so that really had a lot, inspired me a lot. Webb City itself, it was a mine town.
Yeah.
And once they mined the resources there, it kind of went south in a lot of ways. I mean, they still have industry, but it's like so many of these sort of Midwestern towns. But I explored those, you know, and because I thought there was something fascinating about being this almost time capsule.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing creeps up in my work quite a bit.
Eureka Springs is its own character. Serpentine streets, Victorian homes clinging to limestone bluffs, and the Crescent Hotel watching from above.
Some people often refer to the Crescent Hotel as the most haunted hotel in America.
Yeah, for sure.
And what for people who don't know, how to get that reputation?
You know, it was over 100, it was built in 1886, so there's a lot of history there. It fell on hard times. It became a girls' school, and it was like a girls' school during the winter months, and then during the summer it would revert back to the Crescent Hotel. And it remained that way until the Great Depression pretty much finished off both of them. In 1934. In 1937, along comes a guy driving a purple cord roadster, wearing white suits, lavender shirts and lavender ties, and claims to have the cure for cancer.
Yeah.
So he opens it up as this hospital. He's like, well, I have the cure for cancer, so I'm gonna take you all out of this depression. Only, of course, he's not their savior. He's not curing cancer.
No, right.
And that's where the dark period, really, where so many of these ghost stories come from.
Baker's years left scars and legends, enough for ghost tours to weave chilling tales from a painful past.
Is there one story for you that comes to mind? I know you did a lot of research, you put the book together, but is there like a chilling story that you're like, man?
Many of these stories are true-ish, I guess.
Sure.
You know, it's a composite of different things that happened. One was like Baker taking skull caps off of someone, pouring his cancer elixir directly onto their skull. Yeah. Now, okay, so you kind of got to read the book to find out exactly what that was all about.
Yeah.
But it was like a mixture of like Stephen King's The Shining and Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
Yeah.
In the ghost tour, you go down into the morgue, which was in the basement,
Right.
because there were a lot of people dying. Because, like I said, he wasn't curing cancer; he was making money off sick, dying people.
Right.
And I heard so many stories of like remains of patients found in the walls. That kind of just lingered with me over the years.
How much of your book is true or based in truth? And do you have anything that you just kind of made up?
My book is primarily oral histories. I'm talking to people, just people that are connected to the Crescent Hotel, or they were a lot of people that were very advanced in age that directly were connected.
Okay.
It was the Baker Hospital. It was also a lot of just going through archives, going through old letters, going through criminal records, court records, death certificates, you know, graveyard, I mean, just cemetery, you know, you name it, just doing research.
Right. Well, you mentioned something that I kind of want to dive into, and that is this idea of storytelling, because you went around and you said you spoke to people, right? It's people who had had a direct influence or were influenced by the Crescent Hotel. And I'm just curious about storytelling in general. Do you think that is something that we are, oral tradition of storytelling, are we losing that as a society? Is it important to make your book? Is it important to tell stories?
I think it is. I think it's very important, but I don't think we're, well, in some ways, yes. I think reading is on the decline, and this is one thing I really do want to try to, I think graphic literature is a great way to promote literacy, but not only literacy, but also visual literacy. So, you know, understanding the use of symbols and just iconography. I want people to read this book and then go there.
Right.
That is so, because if you look through the book, I mean, I'm meticulous about making sure Eureka Springs is portrayed accurately, as well as the Crescent. But then I want people to just, it's kind of like when you're a grade school kid and you're studying something and then you go on a field trip to that place. And it's just, it's like magical, you know?
It is.
I hope this book just inspires people to, you know, pick up where I left off and just keep exploring and keep learning, you know?
From church attics to courthouse files, from whispered tours to unearthed jars, Sean Fitzgibbon shows how the Ozarks' most infamous landmark still reveals itself, one careful story at a time.
The White River Monster. On a calm day, the White River drifts lazy and peaceful through Arkansas, but locals know its surface hides an ancient mystery. Since the early 1900s, fishermen and travelers have spoken of a massive creature surfacing from its depths. Thick-skinned like an elephant, broad as a boat, and eyes glinting just beneath the ripples. They called it the White River Monster, or simply Whitey. Over the years, sightings came and went, always stirring the same mix of fear and fascination. In 1973, the legend grew so strong that Arkansas declared part of the river a protected White River Monster refuge. To this day, when the fog settles low and the current goes still, some swear they see the water move, like something alive, remembering its way home.
When I was listening around, I heard some very creative names. I heard that you were combining one animal with another animal with another animal to get to what this creature is. So let's hear the names you came up with. What do you say?
Chunky, big bag in the face.
Did you say chunky? It gets a little chunky. What do you say?
Spiky, red-eyed toad.
This is a hinge-tailed bing buffer.
Bing buffer.
Yeah,
Bing buffer.
it's a bing buffer. It's not that scary. Who wants to share with me your favorite that you've heard about today? Great. What do you say? The White River Monster. Okay, what do you say?
Smokey Joe, because I can come up with a whole backstory.
What did you say?
Smokey Joe, because of the legend. I really like the legend.
You like the legend, like knowing the story. What do you say? The Snoffus, the first one? Mm-hmm. The dove kind of deer-looking thing?
I think probably the pink-eyed monster.
Pink eye. What do you say?
Snoffus.
Snoffus. What do you say?
Smokey Joe.
Smokey Joe.
The green guy who has what's his name?
Gowrow.
I say Smokey Joe because he can teach me how to dance.
Okay, so if you remember anything from today, I want you to take away of the fact that folklore and folklore legends and myths can be fun, and they're a way that people have been telling stories around campfires, making up legends that even are passed down from generation to generation, and then eventually somebody writes it down in a book. Right? And you get to have all of these books in your classroom because of all of the legends of these folklore creatures that have existed for a long time. So,
They exist?
well, exist in people's minds.
Oh, so they didn't really see it.
Who's to say?
Let's just say they did.
Okay, I'm never going back to sleep.
Give Miss Sandy your attention. She's going to tell you what to do next.
Tell them thank you.
We've heard from artists, folklorists, even a few young storytellers. And one thing is clear, folklore is not frozen in the past. These stories live on because people keep telling them, around dinner tables, in classrooms, in art, and on stages across the Ozarks. Storytelling reminds us who we are, where we've come from, and how imagination still connects us all. The voices may change, but the tradition continues right here in the Holler.